How are you doing?
Doing great, sir. Doing great. I hope everyone had a great New Year, Christmas, and a great break. I hope everybody's energized and like really looking forward to the new year. A lot of things in plan. Teams are already in place. Everybody is back, I think, this week. So yeah, a lot of plans, and the managers are planning for the execution going forward. Fingers crossed. I think we'll be having a great quarter going forward.
Fantastic. And so let's get right into it. We're going to start with some community questions that we have from the IO Nation, and then we're going to go right into today's topic, which is AI agents, decentralized infrastructure, what's the need, and where does IO fit in that space? So let's start with the first question that the community has been asking. When will revenues be on chain?
Hello, yeah, I was
Hello,
speaking.
yeah.
Yes. So I think we when we planned the revenue and chain, we actually estimated it to be a month-long project. But as and when we started executing on it, the complexities of the whole project like started creeping in. And I think in the middle of the project, we realized that it's not a month-old long project. It's actually more. It's easily a 2.5 months project. So I think roughly the timeline would be somewhere around January and early February. The TNE would be on live. There are a lot of moving pieces out there which were there part of TNE. And I think the major uh, issue also was that we wanted uh, an account where we can move the money coming in from the suppliers. Some pay in terms of cash, some pay in terms of coins. And over there, we needed a KYB account with one of the exchanges in the flow. And getting that KYB account is itself a process of around 2 to 3 weeks, which added a extra delay out there because the moment we realized that we need this KYB account, we applied on a respective exchange. They said it'll take 2 weeks. And by the time we got the KYB account and we started integrating with it, it was almost the end of the year. And I think, yeah, that resulted in a delay of the project. So practically it'll be Jan end or the first week of February when this will be getting done.
Great. So first week of February, and then any updates on when we will be adding workers? On adding workers will become available.
So adding workers happen when the network becomes bigger and we need more supply for a respective hardware, or a particular set of hardware is not meeting a requirement. That happens on an ongoing basis. So, for instance, I think very recently, when Tosef was doing some deals for 4090s, and we actually hired a bunch of 4090s, we realized that the network has to become bigger for that respective hardware. So at that time, for that, we opened up, and all the hardware which were sitting in the queue with high uptime for the respective spec were added into the network. I think very soon we'll be doing same for Macs also. So for the new model of Mac, we're gonna open up the network pretty soon. We did something similar for H200 recently that we were predominantly having H100 as the highest spec hardware with us, but there were some people who were reaching out to us in past with H200 request. So what we did was we opened up a network and allowed H200, and I think soon there's some requests coming for B200 also. Uh, the point I'm trying to make is the network is open, but it opens up as and when the usage starts to increase for a respective model or a new model comes in for which we are very confident that the performance is good and there will be a good demand. We will stick to our fundamental belief that that only keep the hardware in the network which can get consumed in the near time, so that the people who are giving us the hardware with high quality are given a good amount of block rewards and their ROI is high. And as and when this particular set of hardware, let's say any model, start to get consumed, for that particular model will open up, and the best models, the best machines at that time in the network which we're waiting will go in.
And our community is also asking, speaking of workers, on if a virtual machine is eliminated, can a new worker take its place?
The answer is yes.
Yeah, easy answer. Another one people have been asking about is when will IONET begin supporting M4s, M4 Pros, and the RTX 5000s?
So give us a bit of more time. The reason being is I think uh, it's a good news in terms of the platform and platform health, but a bit of bad news because of the timeline, how much we'll take to add these models. The reason is, I think we historically were predominantly focused on GPUs and we were selling those, and our business was doing very, very well. But very recently, we realized that we have a bunch of CPUs also, and in reality, uh, all these software companies which do the business, they actually need more CPUs and GPUs many time. And the first order of requirement for them always when they open up a company is CPUs. So there are a bunch of them coming in, and we're doing deals with them. So very soon we will allow some CPUs to be added into the network. And because that decision and direction we are seeing, which is going to happen in near future, we have to see some percentage of rewards, how much we give to CPUs overall. Because if we just enable M4 to come in, and let's say we allow these CPUs, which will be getting rented out to these software companies, also to come in, the existing hardware and their ROI will go extremely low, which is not a good thing for the health of the network and for the hardware which is in the network, right? So I think we need to wait for some more time. We are doing the math in the background that how many M4 should be allowed as a network to be healthy. Like we're doing as a network, we're doing the analysis and how much demand we have for CPUs and how many they will be coming in. And depending on that, we will decide the percentage of the reward which should go to this whole lot. This whole thing takes a bit of time. We don't want to take like random decisions here. So as a network, we are working on this. Hence, it's taking a bit of time. Although decision has been made that M4s will be allowed. So no commitments when, but I think it'll be soon. I think we should be able to close down this discussion in next couple of weeks, most probably.
And then the final question from the community is updates on staking.
Okay. Before I go to the next question, Tosif, do you have anything else to add to this? This thing overall?
No, no, I think you covered it pretty well there. Of course, sort of like our network will grow as sort of like demand dictates and as our customers ask for things. I think, obviously with the new NVIDIA keynote at CES with all the things now around like the 5090, 5080 series like coming out, I'm sure we'll start to get more and more questions of, different levels of support for different types of devices. And as our customers ask for more, we'll assess those accordingly and include those in the network. So I think you covered it pretty well there, Gaurav.
Yeah, yeah, because like guys, they should understand. Like for us, making a decision that okay, M4 is a good hardware, just add it in the network is extremely easy, right? But like we as a group, the whole network decides on the long-term impacts of this also on the network, which basically is for all the loyal folks who are there with the network for a long run and who have been giving the hardware in a long run, how does their ROI gets impacted? How many rewards they will get? So what is the factor which we should go for M4, right? How many numbers of M4 should be there in the network? Like all these things takes a bit of time, and hence, although we take a mental note in the network that okay, we will allow M4, but deciding how many and when takes a bit of time. So I know it's frustrating at times, especially if you have M4, but please be a bit patient. I think long run it will be fruitful, and we'll try to make sure that nobody's impacted as a part of this decision. So hence it's taking a bit longer. But I understand your frustration, people who are asking this question.
Okay, and then going back to the staking, you were mentioning an update on that.
Yeah, I think it should be there in next 2 weeks. I think one of the problems we have realized now is that we are not the same company as earlier. the reason I'm saying it is like we have become a bigger company, and there are a lot of people in a company which are coming from different part of the world. Initially, we were like a much smaller company, predominantly working out of Dubai and Mauritius and India time zone, and we could plan things out because we knew when the holidays for this region is. Now we have become a much bigger team. There are a lot of people from Europe. There's some people from US and so on and so forth. And what has happened recently is we didn't, and it's our fault. We didn't actually keep into account that in the month of December, all the European and American engineers of ours will be on vacation, which they took off, and that actually resulted in some of the delays, not just from our side but from the auditor side also. Like the audits which we had given, those people were the external companies, and the company which we work with, the smart contract auditing company, that's a US company. And their whole team just went for vacation at the end of the year for Christmas and New Year. And they're literally coming back this Monday, Tuesday. And that resulted in the delay. Initially, it was a small company. We used to work with only like small set of auditors, only one auditors in past, all the team in one time zone, which was like Dubai time zone. And now things have changed. We have bigger firms to make sure that the network is healthy, the smart contracts of quality. We do multiple audits and from multiple auditors, and we basically go to one of the biggest auditors, which are from US, and that like thing we have not done it in past, and that's our bad. That we're getting this learning now that when you work with these vendors who are from that part of the world, they'll not be there in the end of December, and yeah, hence that second audit which we normally do got delayed. Those guys are coming in now. I think in a week or two we should be ready to go with the smart contract side live for staking.
Thanks for answering those questions, and thanks to the community for sending those. If you'd like questions answered by the team, make sure to join the Discord and put your questions in, and we'll be able to answer them in our AMAs. Now, changing trajectory to talk about today's topic, which is AI agents and decentralized infrastructure. The first question I have for both of you is, why is decentralized compute necessary for AI agents? This is a narrative that's exploding, doesn't show any sign of stopping. Why is decentralized compute a necessary part of this conversation?
I'm happy to jump in and get that started. So I think this is something that we think a lot about here at IONET, right? Like why the foundational principle of decentralized compute makes sense for this explosion of AI agents and AI agent frameworks that we've been seeing over the past few months. And I think what it really comes down to is more of almost putting ourselves into the shoes of how we believe these AI agents will operate in the future, right? I think a word that people often use in conjunction with AI agents is they often call them autonomous agents, right? And what does that actually mean? It typically means that this agent should be able to operate on its own completely and be able to sort of get access to the necessary resources, whether sort of like financial or compute or software or virtual, in order to enact its mission and be able to go out and do that, right? So one of the things, actually, a key foundational thing that these agents do need is compute, and there's two separate ways that they can get that. One is through a centralized provider like AWS or Google Cloud. Go to those websites, go hit up those sales reps, get access to that compute. Or the alternative is being able to access a permissionless, decentralized compute system and network like IONET. And I think us as IONET, we're essentially trying to position ourselves as the most frictionless, easy, permissionless way to get access to compute. And when you kind of think of, how a autonomous agent will likely operate in a fully virtual world that it exists in, an agent is likely not going to go through KYC to be able to have like a traditional finance like bank account or take advantage of like TradFi payment rails and things like that. The best way it's going to be able to access and transfer and store value is through crypto rails, right? Like having its own wallet, being able to control its own finances, whether through stablecoins or whether through other forms of like crypto tokens. And the other way, it's in the same way, it's if you want to use compute from Google or AWS or things like that, those are also very permission systems, often with long wait times, often having to go through multiple layers of approval or talking to various like people before you're able to get access to the compute you need, which is another sort of friction point, which we truly believe that autonomous agents aren't necessarily going to prioritize because they're going to take the path of least resistance to be able to access the compute they need to be able to do what they have to do. And I think us as IONET, we're essentially positioning ourselves as that player for these agents to use. So I think in a world where every agent has to make a decision on where they're going to get sort of like certain resources, whether financial or compute, we believe that 10 times out of 10, they're always going to go with that permissionless option, which for compute is IONET.
Thanks. Tassif, can you expand upon that with the partnerships that IO has currently had? We've worked with CreatorBid, we're working with AI16Z, we're working with Cerebro. What has that conversation been, and what are you seeing in the AI agent space right now for needs and where people are at?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. So specifically the three that you mentioned, I think are a great example of sort of the breadth of agent partnerships that we're looking at in this fast growing space, right? With someone like CreatorBid, they're a AI agent launchpad. So they're essentially making it as easy as possible for developers, AI ML developers, to build these AI agents, tokenize them on the blockchain, and get them out into the real world, connected to an X account, or having sort of like community bootstrapping tools and things like that. So they're really kind of building that go-to-market motion on AI agents, especially when it comes to tokenization and making that as easy as possible to do. So I think that's an area that they've been building some really cool things around. And I think when you kind of start to look at like other parts of the stack, like with AI16Z, they're taking this sort of open source framework approach of being able to build community-led sort of like AGI, right? And this involves kind of pulling in AI ML developers from everywhere to kind of build a variety of sort of plugins, be able to use their framework ELIZA and kind of like launch agents based on top of that. And of course, with that, with every agent that's launched across CreatorBid and across AI16Z's like open source framework, all those agents are going to need compute, right? So this comes back to our position as sort of like the foundational layer of AI and of AI agents. Like every single AI agent is going to need compute to be able to grow and succeed, and we're sort of that foundational layer that can like provide that to them. So with as these sort of launchpad AI agent frameworks sort of like grow and succeed, the need for that compute grows exponentially, and that's part of the partnership there that we have with them, is being able to provide that compute and enable them to grow more and more. Similarly with Cerebro, this one, rather than, I know they're moving more into some of these AI agent like launchpad frameworks as well, but they sort of really broke out on the scene with their own AI agent of Cerebro itself, which we can power with our own compute. So I think these three different partnerships kind of like really show sort of different aspects of, wherever anyone is building in the AI agent tech stack, whether it's the actual agent itself, whether it's sort of like an open source framework, whether it's a launchpad, whether it's an AI agent dev tool, there's different ways for IONET to integrate across the stack and ensure that these AI agent businesses are also successful in what they're able to deliver to the market. So that's sort of at a high level how we approach these partnerships in the space.
And Gaurav, speaking on what Tassif was mentioning, we're seeing more, the phrase DEFAI and multi-step operations with agents being built, ones that can do independent DeFi decisions on their own beyond just being interacting for community basis. What does IO do specifically that can help within a multi-agent environment or multi-operational ecosystem?
See, whenever you talk about any business, right, and be it an AI agent or be it any other software which you write, there are three aspects to the business, right? Uh, there's a technical aspect of it when you write these things. There's economic aspect to it, and then there's a philosophical aspect to it also, right? So the technical aspect of this DeFi AI agent and what IO provides is very simple, right? We're a very scalable and accessible platform. First of all, like if let's say today there's a DeFi platform which comes in, and let's say they need 100 GPUs. They can get it from centralized platform, and suddenly this particular platform becomes big, and now rather than 100, they need 1,000. For them, scalability becomes hard. That's where it becomes valuable. Similarly, when these AI agents normally or DeFi AI agents work, uh, if you make it work on a centralized uh, ecosystems, there's a huge possibility, and it has happened in past, that there are issues of breaches, which creates a problem. In a platform like us, where trust and transparency is the first fundamental value of the platform, these things are taken care of. Right? Everything is encrypted. You have the whole access to the hardware, and the possibility of breaches are close to none. Thirdly, when especially in the DeFi ecosystem, a downtime is a straight impact on business and money straight away. There are a lot of businesses, if you have a downtime, you basically can be down for an hour and so, but you still will not lose money. But DeFi is not that. In DeFi, fault tolerant and resilience is of utmost importance, because any small downtime, even for a minute, you can literally lose millions of business out there. So the system has to be very, very fault tolerant and resilient. And that is something which IO provides. In IO, for example, we have ray clusters. And in ray clusters, let's say if you take hundreds of machines, and worst case scenario, if you think two of the machine out of 100 go down, the way the platform is built is the platform itself figures out that the two machines are down. It self heals and adds two new nodes so that the platform and the respective service is not impacted. Right? That gets done. So I can keep going the list in terms of technical things, how it benefits, right? Um, on the economic side and technical side, I think combination of both. In DeFi, there's one more uh, very important need where decentralized compute will especially start to win even more and more in going forward, right? What is that, right? Let's say if you build a liquidation system or any like exchange, let's say any financial system you write where if a particular event happens, let's say Bitcoin goes down, then let's say imagine you want to write a software where I should sell my position immediately. Okay. So your system will perform the best if you can react the fastest, right? That the moment Bitcoin goes down and you get a data point for that okay, it has crashed 5%, you immediately sell your position. Right? That's one of the softwares you can write in DeFi side, right? So one of the ways to make sure that your system is highly responsive is obviously you can write a better software. But another strategic advantage you can do is that your GPUs and your CPUs could be as close to the source of data as possible. So if suppose there's an oracle which you hit to get prices, the closer to those data centers you have your GPUs and CPUs, the faster your like software will react. That's where we come. Why? Because we're not a centralized system. We literally have our inventory in almost all parts of the world. And we have a city level distribution in our side. So any of these software and small companies, mid companies, when they're coming in and creating the businesses, they have a high strategic advantage of reaching out to us because they can get a very, very high responsive edge computing from us. So these are like some technical, economic. I can keep going for an hour also. To be honest, it will not finish, right? On the other side, there's a philosophical reason also, where your whole AI agent and the purity of openness comes in. The whole Web3 concept that the community is important. You need to be transparent of uh, what data you're using. Is it biased? Is it unbiased? Who was the source of owner for the data? And things on that nature where the transparency is very, very important. So in that side also, IO plays a huge role. So for instance, right now we are predominantly compute, and we have like openly told, if you go to our Explorer, where our inventory comes from, uh, how many GPUs we have, like every data which is there, right? It's open. Now, when we are starting to go towards uh, the product line where we will provide data to these AI agents and these AI companies, which they never had an access to, right? We will enable them to store data in a decentralized way. We will provide them with softwares where they can deploy and scale. Now, all these things also, we will have the same philosophy which we have like continued from past year or so when we build products. The same philosophy will be there in the new product which we're building. And what will that do? That will basically bring a lot of transparency on the AI agents who builds on our ecosystem. And that will bring confidence in people who use it because they exactly know what this AI agent is doing. And then once people have confidence of AI agents, they will use it more. And when they use it more, like more and more builders will come, the whole ecosystem will grow. So there is a huge strategic advantage in using a compute like IO from technical, economic, and philosophical, all the angles.
Let me ask both of you then. Let's say I'm building out an AI agent framework. What are the triggers in which I should start looking for decentralized compute? Tasif, I'll start with you because you had mentioned previously 10 out of 10. What are those conditions you see when talking to partners on when they're looking for it for people to be on the eye out if they're building a framework?
So I think in terms of, when to reach out and when to start thinking about it, I'd say as early as possible, right? Like, and I kind of like return back to sort of my point on, compute still remains like the foundational element of all AI agents, right? So you can't really start building anything. You can't build a house without a foundation, right? In the same way that you can't build anything in AI without the foundation of compute. So I think anyone who's starting to think about running an AI agent framework or planning on building their own AI agent, one of the first problems that they have to solve, it's like, okay, where am I going to get my compute from? Where am I going to get my model from? Am I going to train my own model? Am I going to sort of, fine tune an open source model? Where am I going to get the data sets from? So there's these key early questions that, really come in the design phase of any sort of like framework or, like sort of building process of an actual AI agent. And I think understanding where you get your compute from is one of the very first questions that you have to answer. Of course, you might make some sort of other decisions around where you want to get that compute from, depending on the nature of your actual like product and what your requirements are. But I think in terms of autonomous agents, especially built in the Web3 world, I think as soon as you start thinking about where you want to build and how you want to build your agent, you should reach out to well, depending on the size of how much compute you need, you can either reach out to me and my sales team here at IONet, or you can log on to our self-service platform on IO Cloud and permissionlessly deploy the compute that you need and start testing out exactly what works and what doesn't work for your particular use case. So I think in short, if you're building something in this space, you need to start thinking about compute as soon as you start designing and planning.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with him. I think one of the strategic things in leadership which you're told in the very beginning is that you build for scale from day one. The reason being is there is a huge first mover advantage which you have, and you can only keep that advantage if you can keep iterating on that first mover advantage which you took, right? And if you don't build it at scale from day one, you can land up in a problem very, very fast. Like, let me give you a practical example. A lot of people try many things and they still fail, right? Because no one has a winning formula. It's very, very hard to know. Like, let's say in today's world, there are so many companies creating so many AI agents, but there are only a handful which are useful and are good, right? Imagine you build an AI agent which is working, is succeeding, and now suddenly the demand is growing, and then you want more GPUs. And let's say you are not with a player like IO, you have with a centralized system. and you're asking them that I have a huge demand, I need 1,000 GPUs, and they don't have, you're stuck there, you can't scale. Then what happens? Another competitor comes in, they see what you're doing, and you are stuck, you are not able to innovate, you are stuck, and the other competitor sees what you were doing. He basically takes that idea, tweaks a bit more, make it even better, and by the time you were stuck because you were not built for scale, you were with a centralized system, you couldn't scale, you didn't think of like all these parameters you needed to like scale up from day one. What that competitor would do, he'll just come in the market, will iterate on your idea, make a better version of it, and when you are stuck, they'll make it better, make it live, and just take your audience away like very, very fast, and then you lose. So what it is told in business from day one is that if you have done something good and you have a first mover advantage, don't lose that advantage. And the one of the ways to do it is that try to build for scale from day one and think of all these variables right from very beginning. Otherwise, even if you win, you may not be able to sustain that success for long. So hence, like as Tausif said, I'll conquer with that. That any good startup which is coming in, they should like try to look for a player like us from day one. It's just not like strategic for scale, also pricing as well. Because if they use a player like us from decentralized compute, they're basically spending what 1/4 of the price which they'll pay to a centralized player. With that saving which they're doing just from compute, they can literally hire more engineers or can have a longer runway for the company, which will help them to innovate even more. So like there are all logical reasons to start going to a player like us from day one.
And double clicking on that, you've both explained the difference between centralized servers and IONet as a decentralized compute network. What should people be looking for if they want to do decentralized compute? What are the qualities that they should be doing to do their due diligence for investigating, and where does IO sit in those qualities?
Sure, I can start off with that. Um, so this is a question that comes up a decent bit in conversations with customers and partners, right? Because of course, centralized compute has existed for decades at this point, while decentralized compute is really sort of at that frontier of innovation. And, sort of like the larger, more established customers and partners you go to, they obviously have questions about why decentralized compute when, a centralized competitor has been working pretty fine so far. And a number of things kind of come up, right? I think um, in terms of actual use case, like there's areas where perhaps a more centralized compute package makes more sense, but there's areas where, especially now, where decentralized compute really shines in terms of what it's able to do in comparison to centralized compute. So, for example, one of the biggest trends in AI and ML over the past maybe 18 to 24 months has been foundational model training, right? So you've seen companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, Cohere, all these sort of foundational model companies come out where they're investing in hundreds of thousands of GPUs in order to be able to train their massive models, right? Whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Grok and things like that. So in those instances, just the sheer nature of the actual AI workload and the speed and latency required, actually, these companies need all these GPUs to be in the same data center connected by InfiniBand, like absolutely minimizing it to like sub millisecond latency in order to squeeze every bit of performance that they can to do that. So in a situation like that, having all your GPUs in the same data center, like physically connected by wires, is really critical in order to do what you need. But now, in especially in the past 6 months, and I think what is going to be a continuing trend for the next several years, is a lot of compute intensivity and requirements is really going to move more towards the inference side, which is essentially, when once these foundational models are trained and they're out in the hands of users, whenever those users actually use those models, every time they use it, that's an inference workload. And those inference workloads are distributed globally. They're distributed far and wide, and they have a transaction throughput volume that's in the billions, right? So ChatGPT every second is used by millions of users for all sorts of questions, all sorts of like image generation, video generation type needs. So these are things that actually, instead of companies are starting to realize that instead of needing all your GPUs and compute in one data center in US East, you need to actually have your compute closer to where your users are. So if you have a user using ChatGPT in Malaysia, they don't necessarily want to take on like the burden of the latency it takes for this their request to go all the way back to US East, get processed, and then sort of delivered back to them. With a decentralized compute network like IONet, we can put those GPUs closest to where our customers and users are, thus making the latency even lower and thus like really driving up performance and thus and customer satisfaction. So this is one of those instances where we've really kind of seen like the decentralized compute narrative and story like really shine and come in with sort of like this Web3 distributed ethos framework, but really kind of solve this Web2 use case and problem, right? Which at the end of the day, with every customer and partner we talk to, that's what they're really trying to solve. So I think, without going into all the other benefits that we've talked about in terms of like pricing and availability and, like flexibility and all these things that we offer, I think in terms of just fundamental AI ML use case, that's an area where decentralized compute has really started to shine over centralized compute.
Could you please repeat the question once more, if you don't mind?
Sure. When thinking about, we've talked about the differences and benefits of a decentralized compute network versus centralized. In terms of if I'm building an AI agent framework and I've already decided, to your point, we're building for scale, I want to use a decentralized compute network. What are the qualities I should look for in finding a provider and making that determination from a technical aspect?
Got it. Got it. So there are multiple DePINs. In short, like if you have multiple DePINs, which DePIN to choose, and how do you know which one is good, right? So there are some like philosophical fundamental, like which I think Tosif already kind of covered, which is, let's say you're a company and you're using GPUs, and for some reason there's a network connectivity happens between America and Asia for 1 hour. Are you impacted? Because I do know a lot of DePINs here in the market today in crypto whose only data center is in US, nowhere else. So if you're doing your business in, let's say, Asia, and you're using that DePIN, and let's say for any reason there's a downtime or there's a connectivity issue, which is between America and Asia, your business is down. Is that a real decentralized platform? The answer is no. So how distributed the actual inventory is from the DePIN, that matters a lot, right? That actually plays a huge role in the fault tolerance and resilience of the network. For example, as I was giving example earlier, our Ray cluster, when you create, takes machines from all parts of the world. And if a particular node goes down, the system is built in a way that it actually automatically adds the same number of nodes from the other place, which will keep the state of your cluster healthy. Right? That's one. Second, I would always look for security piece, right? Like money could be a good attracting factor for some of the companies who are coming in, but when the business starts to become bigger, in fact, not even bigger, I think in the very beginning itself, security plays a huge role. And I do know that a lot of DePINs don't focus on security from day one, which could be a problem. So look for a player which is very, very matured in security. For example, when we started focusing as IO on security side, we basically went to like best of the companies and found best of the people there who are available to actually enhance the security. So we went to, like, we were in Dubai at that time, and we figured out, okay, what are the big companies in the whole Dubai and Asia market. So if some of the people here, Kareem is one of the big players in that market, and we hired the CISO, the security head from that player, like for us. And he's been a great boon to the company, and we actually enhanced our security a lot. So security plays a huge role in the platform, right? thirdly, I'll also say is what is the long-term vision of the DePIN also? That matters a lot. A lot of people don't think about it, but if I am a startup and I'm using a DePIN player, I would look at the vision. The reason is that I want that particular platform to grow as I grow the company. Because a lot of times what happens is that when you use a particular product just for pricing, uh, and you as a company, when you grow, at that time, you don't, once you become bigger, you don't only think about prices. Everything you look for as opportunity cost. At that time, you feel, okay, what is the developer working on? Is he really working on the business problem? Or he's basically working on something which is not even related to your product at all, right? So if there's a DePIN whose basically vision is just not to give a compute, but overall all the things which a software company would need when they're creating a AI system, right? That is the kind of DePIN I would love to work with. Like for example, in IO, our basic vision was that one of the qualities with which we will capture the client is with a price first, but once we capture the user, post that all the value added services, meaning like if he wants a data, if he wants to have deployment, if he wants to scale the network, right? If he wants anything to do with like distributed storage, a network, anything he wants, we should be in a place to give that, so that once a startup use us in the beginning of the phase of their life cycle, and when they grow as a company, they don't have to go anywhere, and their team doesn't have to do overwork to create new products, or neither they have to work in future to go from one network to other when they become big. So those are the kind of fundamental things and strategic things I look at. And honestly, like we actually thought of this in the very beginning of our life cycle when we started a company, that if we start our AI company today, what are the things I need as a founder? And then when I start to become bigger as a company, how my requirements will change. And that's the way we shaped up our network and the plan also. And we continuously talk to our customers regularly, and touchwood, till now, our philosophy with which we started the company and the feedback which we're getting from our customers like match each other.
Great. And as we're talking about use cases and agents, we've touched upon it briefly, but I wanted to ask both of you in terms of Tasif, with the partnerships and people you're talking about, and Gaurav with the technical work you're doing, what are the use cases that you're seeing that are really exciting you from both ends?
From the AI side and from the deep side.
Correct.
Yeah, I think I'm super excited because I think the hockey stick growth for the AI is just gonna come very soon. Because I went to a couple of events recently. For example, I was in IBW very recently, and before that, I went to another event, and I saw that all the great builders are basically now entering into the AI space. And once you have great minds coming in a specific sector of the industry, great things will automatically come, right? And few things which I, as a builder, always wanted. I see a lot of these companies building products around there. For example, we just did a podcast or AMA sometime back with OpenLedger, right? So they are building a pipeline where people can share the data, and then when they share data, they get incentivized whenever data is being used. Now, one of the fundamental problems any AI startup has is access to data to begin with, because you can rent a GPU, you can hire an awesome data scientist, but if that engineer doesn't have access to data, which the model fundamentally needs to learn on, this, like nothing will work, right? And a lot of the players don't have any incentive to share data to these builders or startup companies, right? Now there are peak companies like this, OpenLedger and other coming in, which are enabling the builders on that side. Similarly, there are a bunch of companies coming on the ML ops side, that once you create the model, how to scale up and make the life of data science easier, from in terms of deploying the model and getting this model accessed by millions of people. So these data science can just predominantly focus on the math side of things and the model creation side of things. So there's a lot of innovation happening on this side technically of the infrastructure providers for data science, because uh, I'm not saying a generic statement, but data science normally, from my past experience, I've seen is like there are some exceptions, but majority wise, the data science are predominantly people who are very, very good at math. They're very, very good at model creation, but not all data science actually enjoy the other side, the ML ops side of things. Now, these companies are basically creating products where they take care of all this boring work, which many of data science people don't like. So I think there are a lot of products which will go live pretty soon. That's on technical side of things. From the economic side of things, I think that the whole like there's a strata of things which are happening. This whole AI group discussions which we're talking about, I think in a layman term, where like initially we were creating only one agent which is jack of all trades, or one particular agent who just does an awesome work at a particular aspect of a problem. That will not be the case anymore. You'll basically have AI agent communities where there'll be AI agents which will represent user individually, and then they will do the work for you as you do the work in a community, right, as a group. And then like these multiple agents will be like specialized in their own problems, and all these agents will work together, and the efficiency overall as a community will be super high. That's one, right? And then there's a bunch of products which are getting created where a normal user, when they come to crypto, and the amount of friction they have when they use any crypto product. I think I gave an example in last AMA that today I've seen practically educated people. Like I literally saw a legal person in my company that when he was trying to bridge between two blockchains, he was having a hard time. And this is basically a guy who's a master's, like who basically was studying till the age of 28, 29. He's a highly educated person, but he was having hard time bridging between two blockchains. Now imagine there'll be AI agents who will do it for you by the help of just text. You'll just tell him in text and they'll do it for you. So the amount of friction which will be there to use products in crypto will be exceedingly low. So I'm super excited about the future overall in this whole AI space in the coming time.
And then toss it over to you. I'm curious what excites you and what you've seen change in the conversations that you've been having with the growth and development of the AI agent space. How have those changed, if at all?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's interesting to talk about change at this stage, right? Like, because I think with the AI agent space, like everything is constantly changing every day, and there's like new things coming out all the time because the space itself is so new that it's pretty much full of experimentation across the board. And with every experiment, people are discovering sort of like new and interesting ways that to use these AI agents to deploy them, and things that sort of like really resonate a lot with users once they're out in the market, right? And that leads to sort of like even more experimentation and growth from there. So I think in the short time we've seen, like, obviously a lot of these like chatbot type AI agents, like reply guy type agents, like Cerebro and True Terminal and all these guys have sort of captured everyone's imagination to start off with. We've seen a lot of these sort of analyst type agents like AI XBT come on the scene. We've seen folks like Cerebro sort of expand even into sort of like the creative arts and like music and fashion and things like that. So there's been some really interesting experimentation there we're seeing continue to grow. I think the other key angle has been just everything around agent frameworks and launchpads, right? So we've already talked about AI16Z and the great work that they're doing with Eliza. We've talked about CreatorBit and what they're doing on Base. Even Cerebro has launched ZeraPi and are starting to grow that out as their own competing framework, but still sort of, with that open source ethos. So I think with each of those frameworks, they're also very much community dependent and community led. So there's a variety of experimentation that kind of continues to happen with that as well. I think where we'll start to see a lot of this stuff go pretty soon, and I think I'm starting to see some of that change happening already, is more verticalization of these agents. I think Jake, you briefly mentioned sort of DFAI earlier. I think that's something that's going to catch on pretty quickly, especially in sort of like the use cases that Gaurav just laid out there, right? We're sort of really simplifying the crypto user experience and making it accessible and, you know, enabling it for like people to really wrap their heads around in a much easier way than having to like bridge and, like do crypto to fiat on ramps and things like that. It's going to really simplify it once agents are sort of that user interface and are able to sort of do all those activities just using natural human language, right? So I think we'll see a lot of agents grow in the DeFi space, in even sort of like the finance space, just around, like being able to run like personal finance or like investing and things like that. Um, you know, Jensen Huang just mentioned in his CES keynote that what we're going to see an explosion of trillions of AI agents, right? And when you talk about a number like trillions, that essentially means that each individual person on Earth will likely have several AI agents like working for them. And I think we'll sort of see that come about with like personal assistants, like organization type like bots that'll really focus on a variety of different aspects of each individual person's life to like optimize them, whether it's like finance or like your work calendar or your dating life and things like that. There's so many like cool instances that could be created there. I think in the Web3 world too, an area that hasn't necessarily gotten as much love in recent times is sort of Web3 gaming. And I think that is likely due for a renaissance, primarily driven by AI agents as well. Because, it's one thing to talk to an AI agent on Twitter and reply to it and sort of engage with it, but it's a whole other thing when you actually see AI agents sort of have a more tangible form within a gaming environment or, like a metaverse or things like that. There's a very interesting project called Hyperfy that just came out that's building on the AI16Z ELIZA framework that's doing some really cool stuff there. And I think we'll kind of reignite the conversation around gaming agents. And I think lastly, we'll also see a lot more agents engage with DAOs, like almost like multi-agent systems, swarms, things like that. Like a number of AI agents coming together to work across a very similar mission, and taking on various aspects of expertise to be able to accomplish that mission as a single unit. So I think the space is still early, the space is still new, and I think we'll see a lot of interesting things come out with agents in the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, I think you raise a good point that we talk about account abstraction all the time in our space, and that AI agents, especially with DEFI can be that mechanism for increasing that level. Gentlemen, I want to thank you both for tuning in. Everyone who's tuned into the episode, much appreciated. Next week, we'll have a special guest that will be talking more about this space as it continues to evolve. Everyone have a fantastic week and stay tuned for more info.
Thanks all. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.